All right, so we have another update on the Titan submersible situation, along with a few different questions that people have been asking. The first thing I wanted to touch on, the OceanGate website completely wiped out. If you go to OceanGate right now, all you'll get is this page. You can't do anything. You can't go anywhere. This is probably what they should have done immediately following the implosion, but it's safe to say OceanGate as a company is completely done, and they're probably just trying to escape this without facing any major lawsuits, but that is to be determined. So OceanGate completely wiped off the face of the earth. All they have left is Cyclops 1, which can't even go down to the Titanic. They don't have a CEO. That should be it for them. And then we do have Titanic's James Cameron in talks to create a fatal Titan submersible drama series, possibly one of those Netflix type series, I'm guessing. I'm sure this is a situation where we know the attention that it's gotten. It seems like a good business decision, not that James Cameron needs the money. This would be more so because he's interested in these topics. He's interested in the Titanic. He's been down to the Titanic a ton. And they're possibly looking at creating, I would say, more of a documentary type series rather than, something. Could you imagine they had actors go down and try and recreate the implosion? That would just be very strange. But it does say a drama series, so maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Either way, I'm sure they're going to wait for the investigation to be released and all of that. And that leads into the next question. So you have the Polar Prince, right, which is the mothership on top communicating with Titan. As Titan is descending to the ocean floor, they lose communication with them. People have speculated they tried to ascend back up after Stockton Rush. Others on board the Titan realized there was an issue, and then the implosion happens likely short after. The question is, would the Polar Prince, the mothership, be able to hear the implosion happen, about an hour 45 under the sea because they were very far deep? You go back to the Titanic back in 1912, the stern goes down, it's filled with air, it doesn't have time to flood, and you have survivors above the water on the lifeboats saying about 20 seconds after the stern officially submerges, they heard a loud bang sound. Could the Polar Prince have heard something similar when it comes to Titan? I'm going to say absolutely not. And the reason is because the Titanic and the Titan are completely different situations. Number one, when you talk about size, the stern of the Titanic is going to create a massive noise as opposed to Titan, just based on how big it is in comparison. And then on top of that, the survivors from Titanic on the lifeboat said about 20 seconds they heard the sound, so it would still be relatively close to the surface when the Titanic stern imploded. I do want to make myself clear, it is not 1000% confirmed that the Titanic stern did implode, but that is the most likely scenario, mainly based off of James Cameron, along with the stern and how it looks right now. It's completely dilapidated. In comparison to the bow, which was relatively still together, the stern looks like an airplane crash. It's just everything is everywhere. All the decks are collapsed. The idea is it imploded on the way down, and then when it hit the ocean floor, all of the interior was already destroyed, so it all kind of just piled on top of each other, and that's why it looks the way it does. I would say that's the most likely scenario, but I have also heard people, that are, not that they're Titanic experts, but they say it's impossible for a ship to really implode. That never happens, and I agree, it's very rare, but it's also very rare for a ship the size of Titanic to sink in the way that it did, to where it breaks in half, and you need the air has to go somewhere. It's not going to, if it's going straight down in the ocean, it's not just going to flood really quickly. It's going to create a massive pressure, and then the implosion happens. So in comparison, I don't think the Polar Prince heard anything because Titan was down so deep. Even if they try and ascend an hour 45 going down, they're already well over halfway to the Titanic at that point, well over a mile and a half descending into the ocean, along with the fact that Titan is extremely small. It's just a submersible. They would not have heard anything. And the situation with the Polar Prince, it's like 15-minute intervals. The Titan sub would say, you know, we're all right, we're all right. It gets a little cloudy because we did get those transcripts that are very likely fake, but you do have to wonder, is there a real version of transcripts to where if they did try and go back up, with which a lot of people are speculating, you would figure in an investigation they would be able to find those transcripts, the Polar Prince communicating with Titan, Titan saying there's a problem, we have to go back up, and then the implosion happens. The Polar Prince is left in the complete darkness. It has happened before. I'm sure the crew aboard the Polar Prince probably thought this was one of those times where they had just lost communications for a little bit. You know, it would come back. I mean, Titans had so many different issues with their dives in both 2021 and 2022. A lot of the dives not even making the ocean floor. By the way, I wanted to talk about that one statistic that said, what was I forget exactly. It was like they only reached the Titanic on 13 of 90 dives. Yeah, other people were saying it, and I was thinking it. That does not make any sense. There's no way that the Titan could attempt 90 dives down to the Titanic in a 3-year span. Not even a 3-year span. So but it seems like all the media outlets are referencing that number like, oh, they only had a 14% hit rate. But how could they go down? How could they attempt 90 dives to the Titanic when they only have like 5 set up every year and they've only been doing this since 2021? They originally wanted to do it earlier. They had to redesign their hull. Unfortunately, they didn't redesign it with steel. It was still carbon fiber, but that's another story for another day. Either way, that number just does not make sense. It is literally impossible for them to attempt 90 dives down to the Titanic in a 3-year period. I agree. I think a lot of the times you went on it, there was a high probability of failure. But 90 dives, that just seems ridiculous to me. But getting back to it, no, I do not think the Polar Prince heard of any implosion or anything like that. It was probably around a half hour to an hour period before they really started getting worried about Titan not communicating back. And it was just too deep into the ocean to where, you know, people like, would it cause a ripple effect? It's just too deep. It's way too deep. I'm not even sure the Titanic's stern caused any type of effect on the surface of the ocean. And we know how big Titanic's stern is in comparison to the Titan submersible. We've got voice recordings and data from the mothership that carried the Titan submersible before it imploded will be examined according to investigators. So we will learn. I don't want to put a time frame on it, but at some point we will learn, very likely, that all of those transcripts floating around the internet are fake. All of the noises have already been confirmed to be fake on the implosion. The only really people that have the noise on the implosion would be the U.S. Navy. And I believe that's a very complicated situation to where even the U.S. Navy at the time of the implosion, they didn't know. They actually had to go back in their recording data and listen, and they were able to hear the implosion that way. That's what I've been told on that, and there are a ton of protocols when it comes to the U.S. Navy and their technologies and their ability to hear other submersibles from other countries, understanding all of it. So I'm guessing that is why, you know, they didn't want to tell anyone that they had heard the implosion noise. I'm not saying there's not other theories. There are, but it makes more sense that would be, like, I've thought it through, and I'm not going to get into the whole spiel of it, but it just seems like that's the most logical thing. They just didn't want to tell because they didn't want to give their technology away, and it's a very complex system. It's not like people think, oh, it's just somebody, you know, sitting somewhere and they hear the implosion noise in the ocean, and it's like, there it is. That's really not how it works. They're not even listening to it. They have to go back and kind of replay the entire thing, and it's more so, it's not even a noise, it's like a beep. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.